While coalition discussions in Israel continue, more and more criticisms from the opposition have been levied at the prime minister, alleging that Netanyahu and his cohorts are planning to cripple the courts and immunize the prime minister from corruption prosecutions, all with a set of new laws that have been presented for review this week. Well, joining us to discuss these concerns more thoroughly via Skype is investigative journalist and Israel Hayom, with Israel Hayom, Akiva Bigman. Akiva, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, so first of all, critics argue that the planned changes and the additions would cripple the court system, would cripple the judicial system. Do you agree with these criticisms?
They will not cripple the judiciary system, but they will keep it in balance. Israel is suffering a long-going constitutional crisis when the courts took on more and more power and authorities, which were not given to them by law. And the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, has to move and adopt some measures to counter this, to maintain the balance between both segments of the government.
So, okay, well, first of all, let's maybe walk back a little bit. What specifically are the critics talking about? What are the laws that would change the judiciary, and how do they affect, and how do they go into effect? How do they work?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of laws which basically were discussed in Israel in the public discourse for almost 30 years now. Some of them deal with I'll say maybe crippling the possibility of a public of people to appeal to the Supreme Court, people that are not straightly affected by government deeds, but that they appeal because they're organizations or NGOs, and they appeal on some kind of public interest. So some of the measures want to cut a little bit of that. There are measures that want to change the way judges are, the way we appoint judges. To have maybe a procedure of a public hearing for judges, which is common in a lot of democracies.
Okay.
Other intend to redefine the role of the Attorney General, which in Israel basically has two hats, two roles. He's Attorney General and he's the lawyer of the government, which is basically contradictory measures, which have to be separated. And so on and so forth. This is a big group of measures, which we actually don't know exactly what's going to be because it's in the discussions now. But all of them have been discussed already. There have been books written on them and academic articles, and the public discourse for years. So nothing is actually new or revolutionary.
Okay, so let's move on to one of the more specific ones that people are getting upset about, which is the so-called French law, which would protect any sitting minister from indictment. The critics, again on the left, are saying that this upends democracy and it upends the legal system because you have a sitting prime minister who is under the threat of 3 criminal indictments for corruption. Doesn't the electorate have the right to see those charges seen through?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a confusion here because there's different laws. The French law says that you cannot prosecute a sitting minister or prime minister. But actually, at least what I know, the discussion is about a different law, which is to uphold the immunity for Knesset members and ministers.
Well, it would make the immunity automatic, whereas now the Knesset would have to give that immunity. So again, though, you're mincing words because either way, it's an immunity for a sitting prime minister, is it not?
Yeah, it is immunity for sitting prime minister, but the mechanism is different. And but they both have their logic, and I'll tell you why. Because there is a possibility in a democracy that some people can take advantage of the legal system to achieve political goals. And these ideas, it's called the French law because it exists in the French legal system, which France, as far as I remember, is a democracy. So these ideas, they're in there to save or to guard the parliament and the Knesset from a misuse of the legal system to indict and to prosecute politicians, people who are elected by the people. So this is also part of this whole idea of maintaining the balance between authorities.
All right. Well, it looks like we'll have to wait, unfortunately, a little bit longer to see more of the details as they're fleshed out. As you said, it's still under review, it's still under discussion. So as the details of these laws and provisions are more fleshed out, we hope to have you back and we'll discuss it further.
At the minute, I'd like to say one more thing, that a lot of people in the opposition that agreed to these measures when there were citizens, when the discussion didn't have to do with Netanyahu personally, now opposed. And I'd like to say one thing. Well, every law has someone's interest in it, and somebody has like a personal vendetta to almost every law passing it. The only thing you have to check when you want to either support a law or to reject is the law itself, is the measure itself. If you agree the measures are good, if you think the Supreme Court is a hyper-activist and has to be reduced a little bit, it doesn't make a difference if it supports Netanyahu or not. It's a good law. That's the only criteria people should appeal, and the people in the opposition, which are actually behaving very politically on this and not being fair.
All right, Akiva Bigman, investigative journalist with Israel Hayom. Thank you again.
Thank you.